السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه: ومن أراد الآخرة وسعى لها سعيها وهو مؤمن فأولئك كان سعيهم مشكورا. Respected friends, brothers, and honorable sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed us in this dunya for a very specific reason and a very specific goal. And that reason and that goal is beyond the boundaries of this dunya. We have not been created for this world. We have not been sent for this world. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us and sent us here for the akhirah. Like the Prophet says that inna dunya khuliqat lakum, that this dunya has been created for you. Anything and everything that's in this dunya was created for the benefit of insan, for benefit of mankind. Wa innakum khuliqtum lil akhirah. But as for you, human beings, you were not created for this world. This world was created for you, and you have been created for the akhirah. So your main goal and your main maqsad, your main purpose of being here is attaining the levels of Jannah. And the higher you go in Jannah, the better it gets, just like everything else. So the higher levels of Jannah are the goals that Allah has set for us, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set this entire world in motion, created everything inside of it, placed signs in everything in the world, all of it that leads back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's the sky, whether it's the earth, whether it's the leaves, whether it's the animals, whether it's the wind blowing, whether it's the sun or the stars, all of these creations are signs that lead a person back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It leads your attention back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ, Allah says, look within yourselves. Look within yourselves. You human beings, us human beings are a complex creation. And the more you study the human body and the biology behind it, the more it amazes you how great Allah is. How great Allah is and how perfect Allah is. With so much perfection, He's created this human being. That how the function of the brain, the function of the hands, the function of the lungs, how the bloodstream functions, how the liver functions, how each aspect of the body is functioning, all of it is being controlled by one commanding center. And that commanding center is the brain. And the brain itself is 75% water. So an organ that is 75% water is controlling this entire complex machinery that is working day and night. And it's not just one piece at a time. It's multiple things working at the same time. As I am speaking, you are listening. As you're listening, you're seeing. As you're seeing, you're breathing. As you're breathing, you're also digesting. Your blood is also pumping. All the functions of the body all working all together at the exact same time without you having to make an effort for it. No one ever stops to say, hold on, I need to breathe. Or no one stops to say, hold on, I need to listen. Or hold on, I need to see. It's all happening simultaneously, all under the command and the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the magnitude and the grandeur of Allah, that He's able to create a system that is so perfect and it runs so perfectly. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in this world and gave us everything we needed to be successful. He granted us everything we need to be successful. So it's like going to an exam with an answer sheet right next to you. You have all the answers, you just need to work. You just need to work to write down the answers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set up the entire system for us to succeed. And what's the success? How you can achieve Jannah. One of the goals or one of the tools that leads a person to Jannah, and one of the fastest ways a person gets to Jannah is through understanding, is through ilm, what we call ilm. The Prophet said, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman, sahla Allahu lahu tariqan ila al-jannah." A person who walks a path, man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman. A person who walks a path to attain knowledge, to attain ilm. And that ilm of deen, he is working for it, he's exerting for it, he's striving for it, he's walking that path. As he's walking to that path, سَهَلَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بِهِ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. As he's making that effort to attain that knowledge, Allah is also facilitating his path towards Jannah. The Muhaddithin explain this in two ways. Why does it make it easy? It doesn't just mean that now because you studied a little bit of knowledge, now Jannah is easy. Right? Now you have an easy pass. Or you have an excess pass, you can just cross. No. What it means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up the avenues for you to understand what is halal, what is haram. Right? What you can do, what you can't do. And He also opens up the doors for you to understand what are the actions you can do that can help you get closer to Allah quicker. It opens up the avenues to understand which amal carries more rewards. So which amal I can do, which deeds I can do that can bring me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So سَهْلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates that path because now with that knowledge that you've gained, or that knowledge that you're studying and you're striving for, He's facilitating your understanding of how you get closer to Allah. The second part is understanding what ilm is. What is ilm? When we talk about ilm, we talk about education, we talk about knowledge, but there's a vast difference between knowledge and ilm. Information and knowledge are two different things. Information is just information. It's news. Do this, don't do this, don't do that. You can do this, you can't do this. The ulama describe ilm as that knowledge that draws you closer to Allah. It draws you closer to Allah. So the path of knowledge is that path which every passing moment takes you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that ilm is not bringing you closer to Allah, it's just information. It's just information. You know it, but it's not serving you in any way. It's not serving you in any way. So the ilm that falls in the heart, the Prophet said, Al-ilm, ilman. Ilmun fil qalb, wa huwa ilmun nafi'. So the ilm is of two types. One ilm is the one that sits in the heart. And that is the ilmun nafi'. And the other one is ilm al-lisan. And the other knowledge is the ilm, is the knowledge that sits on your tongue. So you can talk about it, you can converse about it, you can convey it, but it's not benefiting, it's not going beneath your throat, it's not going down your heart. So ذَاكَ حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبْدِ. And that knowledge that sits on your tongue, that is the hujjah of Allah against you. Meaning that ilm is not going to work for you, rather it will be used against you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us on the Day of Judgment, I gave you knowledge, what did you do with it? I gave you ilm, what did you do with it? On the Day of Judgment, everyone will have to answer 5 questions. And no one's feet will move until they answer those 5 questions. And amongst those 5 questions is the ilm that you acquired, what did you do with it? The money that you acquired, where did you spend it? Right? The youth you had, where did you spend it? Your time you had, where did you spend it? So these are questions Allah will ask, and amongst them is the ilm. So a hujjah, if we know and we're not practicing, that's a hujjah against us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this ilm a means of tool of gaining closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the journey of ilm starts with sincerity. A person that doesn't have sincerity in his ilm can never attain ilm. And the intention of learning knowledge is to get closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ilm starts with sincerity and it ends on amal. It starts with sincerity, it ends on amal. Every time we learn something, it leads us to practice something new. It leads us to practice upon that knowledge. If that knowledge is not being practiced upon, it's not knowledge that's being learned. It's just information being gathered. It's information being gathered. There was one Shaykh by the name of Abu Musa. He used to study under a Shaykh called Abu Ja'far. So once he traveled, he was a Shaykh himself, but he used to travel and study under Shaykh Abu Ja'far. And he had a habit of attaining his durus and his classes, and he would learn from them, and he would go back to his city. So once he came, and he was sitting in the gathering, and the time for Salat came, so swiftly, when people gathered for Salat, Abu Ja'far's son saw this Abu Musa dressed in 2 pieces of cloth. So he got surprised. He got astonished. So after the salat, he went to his father and he said, "Oh, my father, is Shaykh Abu Musa going for Umrah? Is he going for Hajj? Is he traveling? What's going on?" He said, "No. Why? What happened?" He said, "I saw him wearing 2 pieces of cloth," which is strange. He wasn't wearing that before salat. He said the Shaykh has a habit that when he learns something, he implements it right away. So before salat, we were talking about the Prophet ﷺ when he wore 2 pieces of cloth. We talked about the Prophet ﷺ when he wore 2 pieces of cloth. So he wanted to implement that sunnah, so he went and wore 2 pieces of cloth and came back, just so he can practice upon that. Just so he can practice upon it. So the ilm that we gather, the knowledge that we gather, these are means that lead us to implementing the practice in our lives. So we start with sincerity. A person that doesn't have sincerity in ilm, in knowledge, he will never be able to attain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet said, had given stern warnings against a person who acquires knowledge for 3 reasons. One is so he can argue with the ulama. Right? So he studies something, studies a subject, studies a topic, and then he goes and he tries to question an alim or a shaykh just to have a debate. The second is he learns it so he can just act like he's bigger than his peers. He's more knowledgeable than his peers. So these are reasons that, and third is for the person to act like he's famous, to gain fame, to be an eloquent speaker, someone can praise him. So these are 3 reasons people learn, and these are 3 reasons the Prophet has given stern warning against. He said a person who learns ilm for any of these 3 reasons will not even smell the fragrance of Jannah, while the fragrance of Jannah can be smelled from several years away. So the intention in learning ilm should be very firm. It should be studying ilm for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How I can learn what Allah wants from me at every given moment of my life. What Allah wants from me at any given moment of my life. So I am studying, I am learning so that I can attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in anything that I'm doing on earth. Whether I'm doing business, I have the ilm of that business. Once Umar radiallahu anhu, he was walking in Medina and he passed by some shops and he saw a shopkeeper. And he asked him, have you learned the fiqh of your business? He said, no, I didn't really study it much. He said, close your shop and go to the masjid. Close your shop, go to the masjid. Learn the fiqh that applies to your business and then come back and do your business. So, to learn the ilm that applies to what I'm doing. Whether I'm a student, whether I'm a businessman, whether I'm a doctor, whether I'm a lawyer, whether I'm an engineer, whatever field that I go to, I need to have the ilm that applies to me. So whatever I am doing, I can attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through it. And I know what I'm doing, what is right, what is wrong, what is halal, what is haram, so that I am practicing in the right way that's bringing the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, not everybody is going to become an alim. Right? When we talk about studying ilm, we're not saying you have to go do an extensive 10-year course and then come back as a shaykh. No, learning ilm is for everybody. At a bite size or at a level where you need to. Everyone has to understand the level of deen. Al-ilm faridatun ala kulli Muslim. Right? The Prophet said that ilm is an obligation upon every Muslim. Everyone needs to know a certain amount so he can live his life peacefully. He can live his life peacefully with deen. So we learned that about the Prophet when he migrated, he came to Mecca, there were 10,000 Sahabas. But out of the 10,000, there's only 10 of them that gave fatwas. Right? So not every Sahabi was an alim. But every Sahabi had enough knowledge that brought him close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone had taqwa. And they're able to attain their position in court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. By the level of taqwa. So the amount that we know, the practice that we bring, the connection we create with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the level that increases the taqwa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa is another word of abstaining from haram, or doing that which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more you do what pleases Allah, the more taqwa you will have. So, at the beginning level, to have the right intentions, that I'm trying to learn so I can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everybody should have a certain level of studying in terms of deen. We should always be learning about our deen, right? We can never be complacent in our understanding of deen because it's so vast. There's tafsir, there's hadith, there's tarikh, there's so many things that we can learn. But we can learn, and now, especially now, there's so many programs happening all around us that we have no excuse to say, I couldn't attend a class. We don't have the excuse to, right? So learning how to read Quran, learning the translation of the Quran, to understand what Allah is saying to me. A lot of times we don't know what the Quran is saying to us. We're just reading it. Or we hear someone else reading it. And we don't know what Allah is really addressing. But a person that studies, he puts the effort and he learns, he'll be able to connect with the Quran. He'll be able to connect with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that brings him closer to Allah. So, to use that ilm, to understand what deen is saying, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me. What is He saying in the Quran? Because the Quran speaks to everybody at every level of their life. The Quran speaks to everybody at every level of their life. People are going through all sorts of things in life. Some people are going through challenges, some people are going through struggles, some people are hustling, some people are going through depression, some people are going through anxiety. People are going through an array of problems. And the main source of comfort is in the Quran. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that with the dhikr of Allah, that's where the heart finds peace. That's where the heart finds peace. So if we're able to connect with the Quran, we will go through the stories of Anbiya. We'll go through the stories of the people that struggled. We'll go through, when you read the story of Surah Yusuf, for example, like that sacrifice that Yusuf a.s. went through, I'm sure nobody's going through that same sacrifice. We might have difficult moments. We might have low moments. We might have hardships. But it's not as close as what he went through. So to read the story of Yusuf a.s. or Yaqub a.s., losing a child and then crying for years until he became blind and then finally finding his son, like these are real moments that happen through people that we can connect to. We can connect to that story on a certain level. We can connect to the story of Ibrahim a.s. being turned away from his family, being kicked out of his house, being kicked out by his own father, and then having that same community that he grew up in, that same community that he belonged to, gather together to create a fire and then throw him inside that fire. It's a hardship. It's difficult. We read them and we go over them, but we never really ponder over these. We never really ponder over them. So going through the Quran in a way that we understand it, it helps us connect with the Quran more. Helps us connect to Allah more. So we know that these are things that happen. This is where I find my peace. This is why I find my peace with Allah. So the more sincerity we have in our studies, the more sincerity we have in this talab of ilm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up the doors according to that sincerity. He opens up the doors for it. He facilitates it. And we benefit more from the studies, from the ayats, from the ahadith. The more sincerity we have, the more we benefit from that. It's life-changing. Sometimes you read the same chapter of the Quran and it doesn't change you. But one time you read it with a little more concentration, or you read it with a little more sincerity, and those same verses that you read 100 times, that one time you read it changed your life. That one time you read it just changed your life. Or it affected you differently. Or it brought you to tears. It brought you to tears and you cried for a little bit. Or you had some tears in front of Allah. So those are the moments that open up the heart and they create a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to start with sincerity and then to create the right etiquettes of studying ilm. The etiquettes of studying ilm. Because every human being, the thing that beautifies a human being is the ilm and the adab that comes out of that person. Right? Everything has a certain etiquette. There's certain etiquettes that we go through in life. Whether you're meeting people, whether you're sitting in a house, whether you have guests, whether you're going to work, you're coming to work, you're going to a doctor's office, there's certain protocols that you do. And studying ilm has its own protocols. It holds its own value. It has a higher standard compared to everything else. So to adhere to the etiquettes of learning knowledge. What are the etiquettes of studying? And when we study the life of the Sahaba, we find that they had huge amounts of etiquettes and adab in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Or they had a huge amount of etiquettes for teachers that would teach them. Abdullah bin Abbas anhu, who is a great Sahabi, he's a cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. He is a household of the Prophet ﷺ. But he had a habit to travel and learn, and he would gather a hadith, he would gather ilm from different places. So one time he traveled to a different city to meet a person to learn a hadith from him. When he got there, it was time for qaylula. Everyone was sleeping and it was hot. So he went to the door of that person, he had a shawl, he wrapped himself up, and he sat down at the door and he just waited. The wind would blow, the sand would be on him, and he was sitting in the sun, but he just waited there. Until a few hours passed, the person opened the door, he was leaving his house, he opened the door and he saw Abdullah bin Abbas sitting down, covered in dust, disheveled, wrapped in a shawl, just waiting. So he said, why are you sitting here? You are the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. You're our leader. Why did you even come to me? You should have called me. I would have come to you. I would have come to your door. I would have come to your house and I would have, chatted with you and talked to you. He said, no. It is from the etiquettes of ilm that you wait for the teacher to come out. It is from the etiquettes of ilm that you wait for the teacher to come and to be comfortable and to be ready for him to convey what he needs to convey. So I'm going to wait. Ilm is that important. It doesn't matter who I am, but the ilm is more important. So it deserves its own etiquette. Imam Malik, rahmahullah, when he used to teach hadith to his students in Medina, once he was sitting down and he was teaching, and he had a habit of, when he would sit down, he would not move. He would be in his position and he would sit there until from the beginning to the end of the dars. And he wouldn't move. But one day he came and sat down, and as the dars was going on, the students noticed that Imam Malik's face started changing colors. He was going pale, he was going red, he was going pink, and he wasn't himself. So when the dars finished, he asked the student, he said, can you just check what's on my back? So the student said, yeah, sure, why not? So he got up, went around, he lifted his shirt, and there was a scorpion sitting on his back that had stung his back. And it was constantly stinging his back. So the student said, Shaykh, why didn't you stop us? Why didn't you stop us? We would have taken it off. You went through all this time with the scorpion on your back, stinging you, and you're going through all this pain. And he said, I couldn't say anything because of the respect of what's in front of me. Meaning, he's teaching hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. This hadith deserves more respect. I can't open my mouth and complain when I'm teaching hadith. I can't. This deserves much more respect than that. So ilm deserves the etiquettes of learning it. The more etiquettes we will give it, the more etiquettes we will present to it, the easier that ilm will become. The more barakah and nur we get from that ilm. So Imam Ali radhiyallahu anhu says that لَيْسَ الْجَمَالُ بِأَثْوَابٍ تُزَيِّنُنَا إِنَّ الْجَمَالَ جَمَالُ الْعِلْمِ وَالْأَدَبِ. He said, our beauty or our adornment is not in the clothes that we wear that makes us beautiful people. Rather, our beauty and our adornment is in the etiquettes and the knowledge that we contain. So the more etiquettes that we practice, the more knowledge that we contain, that we have, it increases our level. It increases our level in front of people. Right? A person can be dressed simple, but if he has good akhlaq, he has good manners, he becomes beloved to you. This guy is such a great person. This sister is such a great person. Right? But a person can dress all fancy and have no etiquette and no manners. It doesn't matter how expensive his shirt is, you don't even want to look his way. So you know what? You just stay on that side. No one wants to talk to you. So it's not the clothes that makes us important. It's our etiquettes. It's our mannerisms. It's our akhlaq. And akhlaq, the Prophet said that the heaviest things to weigh on the Day of Judgment is going to be your good akhlaq. It's the good akhlaq. So the more good conduct we have, those are the heaviest on the scale of the Day of Judgment. So may Allah give us the tawfiq to have good akhlaq, to have good adab. So going through the phases of ilm, and because we're talking about the pursuit of ilm, so we're trying to connect the dots of ilm, to understand the importance of it, and what leads up to that ilm. So to have the right intention, to have the right etiquettes, and then to have the right striving. Ilm doesn't come easy, right? Studying deen or understanding of deen comes with a little bit of hardship. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable to grow. And that's true for any phase of life. If you want to be a successful businessman, you want to be a successful doctor, you want to be a successful, have a successful career, you will have to be uncomfortable so you can grow in your career. You can be better at what you're doing. Nothing comes with ease. And the same thing with ilm. It's never going to come easy. So we have to sacrifice for it. We have to give for it. Sometimes you'll have, no food. Sometimes you'll have less sleep. Sometimes you'll be exhausted. But the more you keep the goal and the virtue of what you're studying in front of you, the easier that sacrifice becomes. When the motivation is greater than your pain, then the journey becomes easy. So the motivation has to be there. The motivation has to be greater. And then the sacrifices become easy to do. So sacrificing for ilm is nothing new. Every single person that studied ilm and every great person that studied ilm, it came with great sacrifices. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he used to have a student called Ikrimah, and he used to teach him. So Ikrimah was a direct student of his, and what he did is he chained him in his house. He chained him in his masjid, and he taught him there. He said, why did you chain me? He said, I'm chaining you so you don't get distracted. You have to sacrifice, you have to sit, you have to study. You don't go around roaming. So he chained him just so he can sit there and have sincerity and concentration in his studies. So it comes with pain, it comes with difficulties. But because the rewards of it are much greater, the sacrifices of ilm and the path that we take, because the rewards are so great, the effort is also so great, right? When a person studies, he's gaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we're studying the knowledge of deen, we are studying what has come directly from Allah. We are studying what has come directly from the skies, from the heavens. It's not man-made, it's divine, it's heavenly. So because knowledge is so important, that ilm is so important, it's coming from such a higher place, it also deserves a higher exertion. It also deserves a higher strive and a struggle for it. It's not going to come easier because the reward of it is so big. And ilm is of multiple types. You have ilm that is beneficial, you have ilm that is not beneficial, and then you have ilm that is neither. So we strive to attain that ilm al-nafi', and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for ilm al-nafi'. The Prophet used to make dua that Allahumma rzuqna ilm al-nafi', right? Allah give us ilm which is beneficial for us. And that ilm which is beneficial, as we mentioned in the beginning, is that ilm that will lead you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the rewards of studying that ilm is also as great. The Prophet told Sahaba radhiyallahu anhum, he said, if any one of you was to come to the masjid and study one surah of the Quran or a few ayats of the Quran, it's better for you than 100 rak'ats of nafil salah. Come to the masjid and study a few verses. It's better than 100 rak'ats of salah. And said if a person goes to the masjid and studies one chapter of ilm, whether it's applicable to him at that time or not applicable to him at that time, it's better than 1,000 rak'ats of nawafil salah. Better than 1,000 rak'ats of nawafil salah. So the effort that we put, the rewards are great. And the rewards for it are instantaneous. They're instantaneous. If a person is on a journey to seek knowledge, and he's traveling to seek knowledge and he passes away, he gets the reward of a shaheed. He gets the reward of a shaheed. Because he's on such a great path. And the reason for that, in hadith is mentioned that a person who leaves his house to gain ilm, then the angels, they spread their wings under his feet. And they make dua for maghfirah. The creation make dua for maghfirah for that person. حتى الحيتان في البحر, even the fish in the ocean, they make dua for that person. And they ask Allah for forgiveness for that person. So the hadithin explain the reason for that is because one, what he's seeking ilm that has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that in itself is a great journey that he's undertaken. And secondly, that ilm that he's attaining, he will practice upon it, he will do khair with it. He will do good deeds. And good deeds that a person does, it's not restricted to that person only. It's not restricted to the person only. Rather, the khair that we do, it has an effect on the environment that's around us. Similarly, the evil that a person does, it also has an effect on the environment around us. So, the Prophet said, once the Prophet was sitting down, and there was a janazah passing by. So he said, Mustarih or Mustaraha minhu. Mustarih or Mustaraha minhu. The Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, what's Mustarih and what's Mustaraha minhu? We don't understand. So the Prophet said, Mustarih yastarihu min nasab ad-dunya wa adaha. He said, if he's Mustarih, Mustarih is a person who is at rest. He's at rest. So he said, if he's at rest, if he's Mustarih, then he's resting from the difficulties, the struggles, the hardships of this dunya. He's gone now. So he's resting from it. He said, the interesting part is mustaraha minhu. He said, what's that? يستريح منه الشجر والبلاد والدواب. He said that if he's mustaraha minhu, it means that rest is found by his leaving. Rest is found by his leaving. You know, sometimes you have guests over, and then they're just talking too much and they won't go, and you can't wait for them to leave, and the moment they leave and you close the door, you're like, Alhamdulillah, they're gone. Right? Finally they're gone. Or they have kids that are just running around causing havoc, and then they leave, you're like, Alhamdulillah, they're gone. Finally. Right? So you find peace by them leaving. So the Prophet said that mustarah minhu, that person who, not the trees, the animals, the city, the surrounding find peace by his leaving. By his leaving. So meaning all the shar that he was doing. The mustarih is a pious person. He did a lot of khair, he did a lot of good actions, and then he left from this world. Now he's benefiting, he's reaping the rewards of the khair that he did in this dunya. He's going towards Jannah. So he's going to benefit from that in the hereafter. He's left dunya behind. The other person was an evil person. So he had a lot of sins. He committed a lot of sins. And because of his sins, the environment that was around him were also suffering due to the sin that he was committing. Once Abu Hurairah, he overheard some people speaking, and one person said, Wallahi, la yadhlimu dhalim illa nafsah. Wallahi, la yadhlimu dhalim illa nafsah. He said, a person who commits sin doesn't affect anybody other than himself. He's doing wrong to himself. Abu Hurairah overheard that statement, and he got very upset. He got very mad. And he came straight to that person and said, Wallahi, you're wrong. Wallahi, you're wrong. He said, that person who commits a sin, the bastard bird goes hungry and dies out of hunger because of the sin of this person. And a bastard bird is a bird that doesn't live in civilization. It lives away in the jungle by itself. It lives far away from where people live. So it says that bird that is away in a jungle, all by himself, he's dying out of hunger because of the sin of this person. So the sin that we commit, it's not just affecting us, rather it's affecting the environment around us. It leaves an effect around us. So every sin has an effect, and every good deed has an effect. This is why the creation is making dua for the person who is going to seek ilm, is going to seek knowledge, because hopefully through that ilm that he's doing, he will implement that khair. He'll be able to do the good, and that good that he's going to do will bring the barakah. It will bring the khair from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when khair comes from Allah, it means that the environment is clear. Rain is coming, right? Everything is being fed. And when the khair is removed, that's when famine happens, drought happens, right? Natural disasters happen, everything else suffers. So that is the importance of that ilm and the effect it has on the surroundings. And the last thing, over time, the last thing is that ilm is not something that is sought on an individual basis. We have enough resources where the communities, every individual in the community has the ability to equip himself to become a great Muslim. Doesn't have to be a great alim. he can be a great Muslim. He has enough ilm of his deen as well as he has enough ilm of his secular life or his career. Because what we are lacking in the community, is well-grounded Muslim professionals. Well-grounded Muslim professionals. What we have right now is a divide. We have either the practicing Muslim, he goes to the mosque, he's practicing, he's this, he's that, but he doesn't have much of a worldly life. He doesn't have a great job, doesn't have a great education, doesn't have this, doesn't have that. And then we have the flip side, where we have people that are going straight into education, and they have a career, and they're professionals, and they have no connection with deen. They have no grounds of deen. They don't know. If you ask them, can you recite Fatiha? They can't read Fatiha. But they'll be a great doctor, but they don't know Fatiha. So there's this great divide that is happening in communities, and that is not the essence of a Muslim community. Muslim communities were people that were well-grounded on their base, they were well-grounded in their professions, and they were people that gave back to societies and communities and the world around them. That's why when we study the history, we'll find that many of the inventions and the givings that came into Europe and the Western world originated from the Muslims. Because they were well-rounded and grounded in their professional life as well as their dini life. And we have to raise the level of the education in the Muslim community to a level where everyone knows what they're doing and the roles that apply to them. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, and we'll end with this inshallah. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he great alim, great faqih, he went for Hajj. And as he went for Hajj, they did the whole Hajj, he was coming back, he had to shave his head. So he says that I learned 5 things from the barber. That one of the qualities of people, of great people, is that they never stop learning. They're always learning. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, someone saw him in his old age with a pen and paper going to a shaykh to write some studies. So great people never stop learning. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he went to the barber and he said, how much do you charge to cut your hair? To cut hair. So the barber looked at him and said, "An-nusuku la yujal." Like when you do a work of deen, you don't put a price on it. Do whatever you want. Give whatever you want. Right? Whatever you want to pay, just pay it. But there's no price we can put on this act because it's an ibadah. It's completing your ibadah. So an act of ibadah, you can't put a price on it. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he got startled. He said, "Wow, that I felt stupid. I should have asked that question. I should have known better. So he said, okay, you know what, whatever. One thing, he's still startled, and as he sat down facing away from the Qibla. So the barber said, Ya Rajul, Qibla is this way. Right? He said, oh person, Qibla is this way, face the Qibla. So he was already startled, and then he got startled even more. Right? He was already scared, he was like, oh man, I messed up. And now he's like, oh, I messed up even more. He's like, I didn't face the Qibla. So he says, face the Qibla. He says, okay. He faces the Qibla. And then he says, what do you want? He says, oh, just cut my hair. So he says, shave my hair. When he said, shave my hair, he pointed to the left side of his head. It wasn't intentional, but it just happened to be the left side of his head. Because he's already startled. He's like, what's going on? So he said, just shave my hair. So he said, no, al-yameen. So we start from the right side. Give me the right side of your head. So he's like, this is another one. Like, this guy just has one after the other over me. He's just piling it up. So he says, okay, gives him his right hand. So now it was the payment, then it was the Qibla, then it was the left side of the head, and then he says he was sitting down silently, just waiting for him to shave his head. He said, why are you sitting silently? Kabir. So you just finished Hajj. You're in the season of Hajj. You shouldn't be sitting down silently. You should be doing takbir. Do takbir. So Imam Abu Hanifa is like, oh man, you got another one on me. And now he's like, okay, I gotta do takbir. So he starts doing takbir. And then as he's done shaving his head, he's like, oh, I need to get out of here. I need to leave. So he gets up, does his payment, whatever, he's about to leave. As he's about to leave, the person says, where are you going? He says, oh, I'm done. I'm gonna go continue my stuff. He's like, no. Pray 2 rakat salat. After you shave your head, you have to pray 2 rakat salat. Go pray 2 rakat salat. So he's like, okay. He's like, I'm done, man. I don't know nothing. I'm gonna do whatever you ask me to do today. So he goes and he prays 2 rakat salat. So he says, I learned 5 things from the barber. Even though he's a great imam, he's a great shaykh, he's a muhaddith. But sometimes you just need to learn from other people. So Imam Hanifa said the person, he says, oh barber, tell me something. Where did you learn all this stuff? Like, where did you learn all these details of cutting your hair? He said, there's a shaykh here, Ata bin Rabah, and he's a direct student of Abdullah bin Abbas, and he has halaqat in the haram, and we always attend his halaqat. That's where we learn our ilm from. So that was the community, that even the barber knew his deen. He knew the roles that applied to him, he knew the rules that applied to him, and he was an active person in his profession while he was an active person in the halaqat of deen and khair. So he would attend the classes and he was learned. So that is the example of a community that's based on their deen. So we need to raise our levels. Not just individually, but rather as a community, to raise ourselves to a level where everybody is learned their deen. Everyone is learned their deen and they're passing it on to others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me all this tawfiq. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi bil alameen. Jazakumullah khair. I have one day in your community and it was a beautiful day, mashallah. A lot of beautiful people, beautiful youngsters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all, bless your communities and your families, and accept all the khair that you're doing, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.